Welcome. You're listening to Studio Central and Eastern Europe, the podcast series where we discuss the latest academic research on the region. I'm Peter Vermeersch and it's May 2025, and today we have a special episode. A bit unusual for our podcast, but one that's very timely and very exciting, because today we're going to talk about the 2025 Eurovision Song Contest. In the studio with me is Maryna Shevtsova. Maryna is an FWO postdoctoral scholar at KU Leuven, specializing in gender and politics. She's originally from Ukraine and is doing a lot of research work on that country. And she's also a true Eurovision aficionado. Welcome, Maryna, to the studio.
Thank you, Peter.
Now, I have to begin with a confession. I don't know much at all about the Eurovision Song Contest. I mean, I have memories of it, of course, mostly warm, nostalgic ones. I remember being at my grandfather's house that one time when Belgium won back in the 1980s, and suddenly my grandfather, a quiet, old-fashioned farmer who I thought never listened to music, turned up the volume of the television and cheered in a rare moment when pop culture suddenly became part of my rural West Flemish family history. So this podcast is going to be a little bit of a discovery, I think, for me. And I would like to start, Maryna, with asking you, what role has Eurovision played in your personal life? When did you first watch it? Do you have any kind of nostalgic memories of it like I have?
Yes, of course. It's a great question and a pleasure to be a part of this episode. My Eurovision hobby started in 2003 when Ukraine first time participated in Eurovision. And it was Alexander Ponomaryov, a singer who went there to represent us. He didn't do very well. I think, were 15th. And then the next year, Ukraine made a real breakthrough, I think, sending Ruslana, who presented the combination of ethnic costumes and wild dances. And Wild Dances was the song she performed. But it was something so different and so energetic that I started following her from the semifinals. And then I was so excited about her winning the finals. And since then, I follow Eurovision every year, and since 2004, I haven't missed any semi-final or final. That's a commitment, right?
Right, that's an enormous commitment. You've also been present at the Eurovision Song Contest.
Indeed, because Ukraine then won another time with Jamala in 2016, and in 2017, Kiev hosted Eurovision again. And indeed, I had a pleasure to participate in the final. Not to participate, but be a part of the audience, of course.
Yeah. So I would like to ask, how important is it to Ukraine and to other Ukrainians? Are you the only Ukrainian following the Eurovision Song Contest? I can imagine that's not the case and that it's very popular. But what is its significance for Ukraine? Can you talk a little bit about that?
I think it is quite important for Ukraine indeed. One reason is that we consider ourselves a nation with talent for singing and for music. So we called ourselves Spivуча nація, singing nation. And so there is the idea that Ukrainian singers and performers are always good. And well, we kind of confirmed that, being in final every year since 2004. But also, I think it is important for us because for years, being, for Soviet past, but also then in the 90s still, Ukrainian pop scene and music scene was largely dominated by Russian performers and by Russian singers. And then presenting something ours, and especially I think with Ruslana, when she made that entry, it was something ethnic, something representing Carpathian Mountains and Gutuls, and the whole wild energy of the region that was quite different from what Russia had. And I think it brought us this sense of national pride, and it kind of also turned into, on the one hand, this competition of performing every year better at Eurovision than Russians, but also, on the other hand, to prove our belonging, being part of Europe. And I read an article on Eurovision, actually, written by some American scholars who do discuss how Central Eastern European nations kind of feel that Eurovision is one of the ways to reconfirm their Europeanness.
That's very interesting. It's a sort of nation-building project, you can say, for Ukraine, culturally, emotionally speaking, but also politically speaking. Do you think it has the same value for other post-Soviet countries? Is it similar across the post-Soviet space, or do you see important variations there?
I think it varies indeed. I don't, for example, see the same significance put on Eurovision even by Poles or by Moldovans. I think it is for us that important because exactly of that competition with Russia, but also because the years when Ukraine won 2 next times after Ruslana were always colored politically. So in 2017 it was Jamala who was singing a song about the deportation of Crimean Tatars from Crimea in 1944. And of course there were also accusations that she won not because of the beautiful song, and the song was beautiful, I think you can't argue against that, but because of the political context. And then also with Stefania, when the Kalush Orchestra won again it was the second year of the full-scale invasion. So this kind of additional layer of political content makes it special for Ukrainians, unlike for other nations.
Yeah, sort of history lesson also that is being promoted in popular culture, if you tell it this way. Yeah. So do you think it has heightened even more that political nation-building character of it, since Russia has announced that it will organize its own Eurovision or song contest, or its rival Eurovision? It's not called Eurovision, obviously, it's called something else. So there's sort of an interaction process going on there, right?
Yes, and it has always been interaction. I have to say that it's not only Ukrainians competing with Russia, but also you could say that it was the same process going. It was mutual. So just to give an example, while Russia was still allowed to participate in Eurovision, there was always a talk show on one of the Russian national channels after Eurovision, so quite late at night because it's 2 hours ahead from Central European time, where they would gather celebrities and have a discussion about how Russia, of course, was the best at the Eurovision, when it was not the case that Russia won, which was most always the case. Then it would be like, oh, how Europe is this part of the world where they are not following traditional values, when they lost a taste for culture and good music, and it was always praising Russian performers, but also always throwing some small stones into the Ukrainian garden, so to say. The only exception, I think, was when Verka Serdyuchka participated in Eurovision, and she was second. And for those who don't know, Verka Serdyuchka is a Ukrainian artist, which is seen by some as a drag queen or a drag artist. It's a man who performs in the amplua of a vegan conductor. Actually, now also wearing these very exotic, starry costumes with a star on her head. And she's seen by queer community as a drag queen, but I think by both Russians and Ukrainians, interestingly, it is just a guy who wears a female costume just to perform, just for fun. And he used to be loved widely both in Russia and in Ukraine. So when Verka was second, and I think Russian singer was the third, it was the only time when Russians were kind of okay with Ukraine being a bit ahead.
Yeah, interesting. Now you mentioned the queer dimension. Obviously, that's a very large role. I'd say like gender politics is impossible to ignore in the Eurovision Song Contest. And as a scholar of gender and politics, how do you see that connection between Eurovision and gender politics? It seems to me that while Eurovision has always had some political aspect, it has not always been in the same way political, and that the gender dimension has become something important in more recent times. Can you sketch some pivotal moments and give your view on this?
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's a great question. I think we could already see that Eurovision was more inclusive than, say, other competitions of the similar character already in early 2000s, or actually even earlier when Israel, I remember, won with the trans singer, Dana International. It was 90s or 80s. But then if we look at Russia actually sent in early 2000 the band that was then saying that they're a lesbian couple, Tattoo. Later it came out that actually the women were not lesbian, and now one of them is a member of a Russian party. So it's quite a story in itself. Verka Serdyuchka was also there, I think, in 2007. And the first place was then taken by Marija Šarifović, Serbian lesbian artist. So, it was always an inclusive space, but I think really the moment came with the Russian and famous gay propaganda law in 2012. When it was, of course, not well received by many in Europe. And then as a kind of symbolic response was the victory of Conchita Wurst in 2014, which was, of course, then very much discussed in Russian media, as opposed to two singers sent from Russia, the girl singing about love and peace, two young angels, as opposed to this horrible woman with a beard, as Russian media called Conchita. So I think since then, somehow every year it was more and more and more, and now I would say Eurovision really turned into loved by queer, but also seen by queer community as their competition, as their event.
Yeah, that's very interesting. How should we interpret that development? Do you think it's polarizing views on Eurovision and on gender politics in Central and Eastern Europe generally? Or do you think that Eurovision is a space where all kinds of queer identities are not just accepted, but actually celebrated and brought into the mainstream, in fact?
I think yes, but I wonder how much of mainstream still can we give to Eurovision, because it is still seen by many as this weird thing, kind of also trashed, saying that the music is not good, that this is the competition for all kind of weirdos on the one hand. On the other hand, the audience is massive, and so people secretly enjoy it, or not so secretly. People in Australia watch it, even though the time is not very good for them. And also, I think in a way, this is something that keeps this idea of European values and this Europe as a liberal space, even though it's not that liberal anymore in some countries, unfortunately. But, you know, this is one of those last places of hope where it's still Europe that accepts, you know, also black singers presenting Sweden, or trans people, queer people, non-binary people, all kind of personalities that are not allowed maybe somewhere else.
And do you think that urgency that you now outlined, that it's tangible in all European countries, or is it different from, let's say, a country like Ukraine or Central European countries, different from other places where you lived? I mean, you lived in Sweden, where Eurovision is probably very important as well, with a lot of winners and so on, but maybe not so political. I don't know. Is it different from, you also lived in Slovenia, you live in Belgium now. So in all these places, do you think it functions in the same way, and has it the same urgency, that political edge?
I think it varies from year to year and also from performer to performer, because you could see as Sweden, indeed, for Sweden, Eurovision is a big thing with Melody Festival and with a lot of creative minds put into creating a perfect song and, you know, perfect choreography. But on the other hand, when they hosted Eurovision last year, they did have massive protests around the participation of Israeli singer, and the winner from the year before, Loreen, she did support openly, for example, Palestine. On the other hand, of course, Israel is still allowed to participate in Eurovision while Russia is excluded. So, and then you see that while, for example, flags and political statements are not allowed on the stage, there are some exceptions, and people do squeeze in some messages or some symbolic colors on the stage. So I think it's dependent on who, which year is selected and how they are selected. It also kind of colors the performance that the country brings.
Yeah. So in a way, you could say that even perhaps the very fact that they try to make it into a non-political event opens the opportunity for participants or commentators or politicians to make it into a political event. And we've seen a lot of these attempts in recent years. Maybe you could say a little bit also about the word Euro in Eurovision. So it's also being watched and followed. You mentioned Australia. You know, a lot of countries that, can we consider them European or not, is perhaps a question. So is it a project, in your view, that also tries to make Europe present in the wider world somehow?
I think it is. I think it is a way of soft diplomacy,
soft
power, European
diplomacy.
soft power, indeed. And the fact that some countries, such as, for example, Azerbaijan or Israel, of course, Australia, that's a peculiar case, that they want to be part of it, and then they put so much, effort into it, into designing a good performance and hiring a good composer to have a very good song that tells a lot. So I think this is a project that is maybe indeed underestimated by some, because otherwise, if it were such a horrible competition with trashy songs, why would all those countries want to participate there?
Yeah, in a way, you could be surprised that the European Union or European institutions don't want to use it more as a sort of a cultural diplomacy product. Yeah. Interesting.
Maybe we should send a note to von der Leyen Commission.
Let's do that. Yeah, that's a good idea. So the current edition is ongoing. What should we watch out for? What are you watching out for? Are you watching out for the entertainment aspect, or for the cultural, or for the political aspect? What is there to watch now?
I think, so first about the style, there are always these attempts to copy what won last year. and they're always unsuccessful because usually you see that if one year, for example, a sad lyrical ballad wins, then usually the next year there would be a demand for more entertainment and something exciting, a dance, a cool band.
Counter reaction
Exactly.
is there a lot too.
Like last year, there was this very good voice performer, solo singer. So I think this year this will not work. And there are some attempts to do the same. For example, from Austria, there is an opera singer. I don't believe that they will win. But I also think that people are a bit tired with all horrible events in the world. And that I feel like this year, and what I read in the comments and the discussions, people do want some entertainment. So my guess would be on some more optimistic songs, and we see that, for example, the Estonian entry Espresso Macchiato, which is like a little bit of a parody on Italy, as it's in broken Italian. It was very successful. My personal favorite is Sweden, which is represented this year by Finnish singers who sing about sauna. So they are now, I think, on the top of bookmakers' lists. Let's see how it works. But second thing is, of course, the voting system. They change voting system every year a little bit. So that's one surprise we expect from organizers. Sometimes it's a good change, sometimes it's a weird change. And my favorite moment in Eurovision is to see the jury votes, because in jury votes, you are told how many points from which country goes to which country. It takes like an hour, but it's my favorite hour of the whole Eurovision night. It's only 1 minute or a minute and a half that every country gets. So it's interesting to see who they chose to give the votes, to be on TV at that night, how they open it. And they always try to be original, maybe use the language of the hosting country or something, or they sing a bit or make jokes, sometimes good jokes, sometimes not. But then, of course, to whom 12 points go. So This is always this moment. And I, as Ukrainian, I always watch out for who gave how many points to Ukraine. Now with many Ukrainian refugees in many countries, of course, this also plays a role. So not for jury vote, of course, but for public vote, we can expect that then there will be more votes for Ukraine.
And I can imagine when the jury vote is out that the speculation and the controversy among the people on social media starts to happen.
Oh, absolutely. And for example, I really loved the situation on the second year of war in Ukraine, of the full-scale invasion in Ukraine, when Ukrainian jury dared not to give points to Poland, and the Polish people opened their hearts to Ukrainian, and they took so many refugees. But somehow Ukrainian jury didn't like the song. I don't remember anymore which song was that. But we had the whole outrage on social media. People were writing apologies to Polish people, like, dear Polish sister and brothers, we are so sorry for our stupid jury. And jury had to apologize officially also online. Well, I think it's, of course, an exceptional case. But still, there is a lot of discussion about which, like, among the lovers of Eurovision, how their country voted.
And with Ukraine, the stress of the war situation, does it bring extra relief? Is it extra popular in the last few years, the Eurovision Song Contest, as a sort of, letting out of the tension, some sort of valve for the pressure that is going on in the country?
And I don't think so. I think that on the one hand, there is this controversy or there is debate, should we even participate because there is a war and sad times, and should be another topic, should we spend money? But actually, Ukraine doesn't spend that much money on that, and most of the countries don't. But there is, of course, the whole idea, the myth that there are millions going on that. That's not true. But I think for those who do appreciate Eurovision, it is important, and we don't want it to stop, because it is another situation where you can remind the world about Ukraine, when we can show that we have people who can sing. And even if, we probably will not win this year, we are not that good, that's for sure. Even if we get into the top 10 or top 15, that's another reason to be happy for a little bit, for ourselves, for them, to be proud for our nation. So I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, and you, as a fan of the event, of course, are very happy that it happens and that Ukraine participates.
Absolutely. I always say that for me, Eurovision is a little bit like Christmas. I wait for it for so long. I start preparing for 2 months in advance. I listen to songs. I choose my favorites. And then it's so fast and it's over and you have to wait for another year.
So it's like Christmas, but with glitter and better songs.
Yes, and it's warmer. The weather is usually nicer.
Yes, that's true too. Are you going to the contest this year? Are you going to be present in Basel?
I wish, but the situation with tickets is horrendous. It's impossible to get them. And this is, of course, because there's this whole agiotage around buying it. And the Eurovision is hosted in small concert halls and people want to travel. Even some come from Australia. So now the online line is so big that you need some magic to get a ticket. But On the positive note, I know that the concert is staged for those who watch it on TV rather than those who are in the concert hall. So actually it is in a way more fun to watch it online, but sometimes it's nice to be in the audience too.
So you will be watching it from Belgium this time with friends and online with a lot of your fellow fans, let's say.
Yes, and in Belgium this year it actually coincides with the Pride Week, so there will be a very big show in Brussels with a big screen, so maybe I will watch it there.
Fantastic. Maryna, thank you so much for this conversation. I learned a lot about the Eurovision Song Contest, and I know more now about its political and social and cultural and emotional significance. So thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting me, and please vote for Ukraine.